The Senate chamber fell deadly silent as Senator Rand Paul's voice echoed through the marble halls, his face red with anger as he pointed directly at Representative Jasmine Crockett. "You don't belong here," he screamed, his voice cracking with fury. The Kentucky senator had just done something unprecedented, publicly challenging a sitting congresswoman's right to participate in a joint session. But what happened next left every senator, reporter, and viewer across America completely speechless. Jasmine Crockett, the freshman representative from Texas, didn't back down. Instead, she delivered a response so powerful, so unexpected, that it sent shockwaves through the entire political establishment. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss these jaw-dropping political moments that are reshaping America. This wasn't just another political disagreement. This was the moment when the old guard of Washington learned that the new generation won't be silenced, won't be intimidated, and definitely won't be told where they belong. The confrontation had been brewing for weeks. Paul had been making increasingly hostile comments about inexperienced members who dared to challenge veteran senators. Everyone in the political world knew he was targeting Crockett, whose passionate speeches about voting rights had been going viral on social media, earning millions of views and praise from civil rights leaders across the country. What made this confrontation even more explosive was the timing. The nation was watching as Congress debated fundamental questions about American democracy. Who gets to vote? Who gets to have a voice? And who gets to decide these crucial issues? The stakes couldn't have been higher, and both Paul and Crockett knew that this moment would define not just their own careers, but the direction of American politics for years to come. Senator Rand Paul, the 61-year-old libertarian firebrand from Kentucky, had built his reputation on being the Senate's most unpredictable voice. Son of former presidential candidate Ron Paul, Rand had spent over a decade in Washington challenging both parties, staging dramatic filibusters, and never backing down from a fight. His colleagues knew him as brilliant but volatile, a man who could explode without warning when he felt principles were at stake. Paul's political career had been built on his image as an outsider, someone willing to challenge the establishment regardless of party lines. He'd gained national attention with his 13-hour filibuster opposing drone strikes on American soil, and his passionate speeches about government overreach had made him a hero to libertarian-minded voters across the country. But Paul also had a reputation for a quick temper and a tendency to personalize political disagreements in ways that sometimes crossed the line of Senate decorum. At 61, Paul represented the old guard of Washington politics, a world where seniority meant respect, where length of service translated to authority, and where newcomers were expected to defer to their elders regardless of the merit of their ideas. He'd grown accustomed to being the smartest person in the room, the one whose constitutional knowledge and political instincts were rarely questioned by colleagues or media alike. On the other side stood Representative Jasmine Crockett, just 43 years old but already making waves as one of the most fearless voices in Congress. A former civil rights attorney from Dallas, she had won her seat by defeating established politicians who underestimated her intelligence and determination. Unlike many freshman representatives who stay quiet their first term, Crockett had immediately positioned herself as a defender of progressive values and wasn't afraid to take on anyone, regardless of their seniority. Crockett's background was fundamentally different from most politicians in Washington. She'd grown up in St. Louis, the daughter of working-class parents who taught her that respect was earned through hard work and results, not inherited through privilege or position. Her path to Congress had been unconventional. She'd worked as a public defender, representing clients who couldn't afford high-powered attorneys, before transitioning into civil rights law, where she'd taken on cases that other lawyers wouldn't touch. Her legal background had given her something that many politicians lacked: the ability to think on her feet, to argue complex constitutional points under pressure, and to remain calm when opponents tried to intimidate her. She'd faced down hostile judges, aggressive prosecutors, and corporate attorneys who'd tried to overwhelm her with their resources and experience. In each case, she'd learned that preparation and knowledge were the great equalizers, that if you knew the law better than your opponent, you could win regardless of their advantages. What made Crockett particularly dangerous to establishment figures like Paul was her complete lack of deference to traditional power structures. She didn't care about Senate traditions or unwritten rules about how freshman members were supposed to behave. She'd been elected to represent her constituents, not to be a quiet backbencher who waited years before being allowed to have meaningful input on important issues. The confrontation erupted during a rare joint session discussing federal voting rights legislation. For months, tensions had been building between progressive Democrats pushing for expanded voting access and libertarian Republicans arguing for state control over elections. Paul had been leading the opposition, while Crockett had emerged as one of the most articulate defenders of federal voting protections. But this went deeper than policy disagreements. This was about power, respect, and who gets to have a voice in America's most exclusive political club. Paul represented the old Washington establishment, white, male, and accustomed to being the loudest voice in any room. Crockett represented the new wave, diverse, young, and absolutely unwilling to be dismissed or ignored. The stakes couldn't have been higher. With cameras rolling and the nation watching, this confrontation would either establish